Minute?
No, we're ready to start. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clyde Shirati from African Knowledge, a new show on Africa Media Australia that seeks to highlight knowledge, insight, experience, and wisdom from within the African Australian communities. And we're very happy to know that you are watching, and we want to thank you for all the reaction and the feedback we're getting, which is quite positive. We encourage you to continue to not only communicate with us, give us your feedback, but share the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll put the details on the screen. And also, if you have something that you want to share, whether that is your skills and experience as a professional, or even just an interesting story that may inspire others, or anything really of value, you are more than welcome to contact us, and we'll be more than happy to have you on air with us. So tonight, the topic of the discussion is about mental health. As this COVID crisis continues, we obviously know that it is challenging because many of us have gone through it. In Melbourne, we are at the 6th lockdown. You know, it's not going anywhere. We thought it would only last a few months, but it's not. New South Wales right now is in a bit of a hot water, and that seems to be the case for many other areas, although at different degrees. So tonight I thought I would talk to people who have experience in mental health, because one of the aspects of this crisis is that, well, it has a toll on people's mental health or emotional well-being as well. So the fact that it's going to certainly linger for a while, we need to be able to know how to cope with this, not just for ourselves, but for our families and for the community. So this evening, I've got with me two mental health specialists from the African Australian communities, and I will introduce them. I've got Keith Bebe, who is a mental health professional and addiction specialist, and I have Dr. Francis Akwa, who is also a mental health specialist. Those who are in Melbourne probably know Dr. Francis Akwa has been here for quite a long period of time. Keith has also been here for a number of years, so we're going to talk to them about this issue. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Good, thank you. Thank you, Clyde, for having us.
No worries. I'll start with Dr. Francis. You have been in this space for quite some time. The COVID crisis is obviously very serious. What is your reading in terms of how people are coping, mentally speaking and emotionally speaking?
It's been very, very, very challenging for a number of people, not just within the African community, but in the general community. I've been online talking to people in the vast groups, especially people from the non-English speaking or the CORD communities, about looking after themselves and how to support each other during this difficult time.
Okay. Keith, you also have been working in this space for a while. What you're reading about the emotional and mental well-being of the people in general with this crisis continuing to wreak havoc?
Yeah, I think, as Francis has clearly said, I think COVID has affected us, regardless whether you're African or not, or whatever background, has affected you physically, emotionally, economically, and socially. And we are in a very long time in a kind of state of an alert, scanning the environment, looking for threats. And those threats are real because we've seen people dying. And so, but then I should also emphasize that the challenges are higher for those who are living away from where they call home. I think we've seen where developed countries ran around the world to get their citizens home. And unfortunately, for many of us from the African communities, that was not an option that was available. And some probably would have preferred to stay here because it's much better here, because probably it's well equipped to deal with such situations. But when you are looking at it from a distance and you're looking at your relatives dying and you are unable to grieve in the same way that you normally do, that leaves you even in a worse situation. But actually, to make things worse as well, I think we've ended up in the first round, which was say 2020. We kind of figured it out, but we then ended up with this second phase, which seems to be, for me, I would lift up my hand. It's even harder for me. But you would think that with experience, we have learned how to survive COVID. But it seems like we are running towards an invisible finishing line.
Yeah.
We do have some targets, but those targets seem to be constantly moving.
Yeah.
And that is to some extent paralyzing.
Absolutely.
And
It is absolutely paralyzing, the fact that things keep changing. We sometimes hope that things are getting better, and then all of a sudden, it happens again. Francis, is there anything that prepares anyone, let alone the African Australian community with different levels of vulnerability in the population? Is there anything that prepares anyone for this sort of crisis, which is unprecedented, isn't it?
Yes, the challenge is so enormous, and the uncertainty. Like Keith said, I'll just give a brief example of let's call it the last 4 weeks. The last 4 weeks alone, I've attempted to go away each weekend that I've booked personally to just give myself a break, and then we get into a lockdown. So the uncertainty remains so high, including even just the weekend pass. In fact, I had a very important celebration, and I chose to celebrate it despite the fact that we couldn't have other people within the family. So for me, what I think people should do is find a way to continue to live despite the fact that it may not be with other people. So my situation was I had my 39th wedding anniversary, and I told my family, let's celebrate. Don't worry about the food. I went not to cook, but I got different types of food. And my condition was that we dress up to celebrate. So to continue to exist, it means we continue to do things that we would have otherwise done with other people. I guess what people are struggling to do, and what I have been encouraging my clients, some people who are actually working full time, but within the house, are even struggling even more than people who are unemployed, because their productivity have gone down. Their ability to even interact with other people, the bustling of actually driving to work, going on public transport, even not even talking to people, but actually seeing human beings are no longer happening. And but how we change this thing is by planning, by thinking about changing our routine, getting up in the morning, getting up, having our shower, dressing up as though you're going to work, having your lunch break, having, well, breakfast, morning tea, lunch break, not in front of your computer, not in front of the screen, but moving away from those screens. Of course, we are all short of vitamin D. As we talked about it, even the people who are now locked down in the high-rise flats, how do they get their vitamin D? Zero. So those of us who have the opportunity, we should get out, get in the sun, even for half an hour, go for a walk. And I'm encouraging people to even go for a walk around different blocks, take some photograph, look at what you have just noticed, and then come back and absorb the different environments. Because once we are stuck in our rooms, we keep watching at what I'm watching at the moment, the screen. And we watch
Sure.
the screen all day.
Absolutely. I'll come back to that point a little later in terms of the really some coping mechanism that we're going to look into. Keith, let me go back to you. Do you think African communities, for example, are any better prepared? Or is there anything that is quite particular to the communities that may help people to cope with this situation, or it's pretty much the same for everyone?
I think we learned a lot from the first phase, what I would like to call the first phase. The experience that we encountered, for example, with the Flemington situation in the high-rise building, that was it was hard, it was terrible to witness, but it was a very good learning process. It was also a very good learning for the government and also for Australia as a whole. We had not thought of the way we framed the subject of COVID to fit into what the people were experiencing. We went, when I say we, I'm talking about healthcare professionals, we took COVID to be just like any other message that we framed around disease and illness. But we did not go down to the people to say, how best can we explain this to you? So that we've learned better. And as a community of ethnic minority, I would like to use probably BIPOP as an example, people of Black ethnic minority groups as a whole. We now see that the government has come down and has improved in the way the message is coming across. We also see how measures have been put across to meet people where they are instead of people going towards where the services are. So not using the old style of intervention and treatment, but working along with the people to say, what is going on? What are we seeing? And how can we meet people where they are instead of the other way around? If I may give you an example of the app that was produced by the government at the start. There was a very big assumption to think that everyone's going to be downloading it. Everyone's going to have enough money to run the data. Everyone's going to be able to know how to use it. And then the process of also booking or going for tests, everything is run on text messages. That was another big assumption. But now we've learned that we can actually do things differently by bringing the services to people. But unfortunately, that didn't translate to other states. So we saw what happened in New South Wales. They had to catch up with that very late. And then the blame game starts, that the ethnic minority groups are not up to date. No, we're up to date, but you are giving us information that we are not able to process. So understanding health processes is a very complex, not a very straightforward situation, let alone COVID, which is so new. The other part that I would like to highlight is that from the mental health side of things, there is no proven psychological interventions that have been put across to say, this is the framework that you can use. What we've done is we have adopted different things to use. Like Francis said, breaking down your day into a routine. But so there are some adopted and modified mental health interventions that have been proven to work, especially in these situations where people feel that there is unpredictability of the situation, lack of control. And if you've got those two running at the same time, unpredictability and lack of control, then you're likely to have mental health problems or challenges, everyone, whether you're within the African community or not. So, how do we get control of those situations is probably what I would like to go into next.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get to that soon. Let me go back to Francis. I think Keith raised a good point there about the way the government, for example, has communicated with people in relation to this crisis. What do you think in relation to that? Do you think the communication around this whole crisis has been appropriate generally, but also specifically with regards to the needs of migrants and emerging communities? Has that aspect of things been taken care of? Do you see gaps anywhere?
Unfortunately, not, and the gaps remains bigger and bigger. I'm recalling even about a year ago when the Flemington lockdowns happened. Some of us were proactive and we follow up with a number of committees and things like that. Unfortunately, we get to take our advice and they disappear. And you can't get anybody to follow up with those issues. So we are still back in square one. Some of these things are happening. I recently wanted to donate some stuff to the Flemington lockdown. We couldn't find anybody. Lucky for me, I had a volunteer who was able to chase up the people. And we sent the donation. We get criticized for sending so little in those packages, but they were not to feed those people. They were supplements that we were providing. This is what is happening for our community. What I'm saying is that we also have to adapt and adopt new techniques, new ways of approaching these things. The issue, as even Keith has said, where is so much, it's unpredictable. For me, when this lockdown was announced for 4 days, we have already set up ourselves and prepared ourselves. We said, look, it's not going to be 4 days. It's going to be at least 2 weeks, if not more. By maybe the 7th day, we were already preparing for additional 2 weeks. As we speak, yes, additional 2 weeks have been added. But for me, psychologically, I'm prepared for another 2 more weeks. So this is what we have to start thinking. We have to change our mentality and start thinking. Nobody knows how long that's going to last for. Look at, again, if we compare it to New South Wales, what is happening for them. I think most Victorians were already calling that, look, the whole state should be locked down. The whole state should be locked down. They went by the piecemeal approach, and here they are. Of course, yesterday I was on the road at night, at 10 o'clock at night, and Victoria has obeyed the rule. And here they are. Nobody was on the road at 10 o'clock last night, which is what we should be thinking about. But for the African community, if we could go back to us individuals, we should start thinking and learning from the experiences we should be thinking about and having a contingency plan individually.
Clear and direct.
As a society, of course, we are collective, but we can't continue to rely on the government to come in and rescue us. We have to think as individuals and be prepared that, yes, some of these things has to be our own responsibilities.
Absolutely.
Sometimes our situations are quite different because I already mentioned it in other forums. Of course, sometimes we have 4 generations living, 3 or 4 generations living in under the same roof. Like I said, for me, it's about how do we teach people to develop skills and routine in helping them to overcome and to prevent situation from getting worse? How do you check on your friend? How do you check on your neighbor?
Okay. Well, certainly, we have to find ways to help each other to face this crisis. If it looks like you were going to add something, was it what was you?
Yeah, I would like to frame this in absolutely agree with you, Francis. There's more that we can do, but I would like to frame this in two parts. There is COVID, which is causing us a lot of stress. I would actually to say collective stress because it's been cumulative over a period of time. Then there's a new part of this that I think we also need to acknowledge, the part of playing your part in the vaccination. So we play our part in many different ways. We play our part in adhering to the guidelines of staying at home. But then there is a new part that is coming. You need to get vaccinated. And that, again, is another toll on the mental health side of things because we are facing challenges. We're bombarded with information. There's that, I would say, hesitancy, vaccination hesitance, and I think it's real within our community, and that's another toll on the mental health that we need to think about. Yes, there's the COVID part of restrictions, but there's also the part of how do we cope with that hesitancy, or probably to some extent there are some who I haven't come across many, but there are some who I would say are also probably on the side of anti-vaccination. And how do we work with that? Because they are part of us, and those who are also hesitant, they are part of us. And those who've been vaccinated, they are also part of us. So as a community, how do we come together with all those three dimensions, and three of them needing to work together for the continuity of a society and a small community which is very vulnerable? Putting resources together. How do you put resources together to say, let's get everyone vaccinated when you've got within the group those who are hesitancy? So there is leadership that needs to come in, and leadership is already there, but it's a different kind of leadership in the sense that it's a leadership when I am grieving my own family members who are dying in Africa and I can't be there, but at the same time, I need to go and sit down and talk to someone who is going through vaccine hesitancy. When a relative in Africa is absolutely would take anything that they can if they were given that opportunity. But here I am having to juggle to convince someone who is choosing between AstraZeneca and Pfizer. And I'm thinking, well, what are we dealing with here? So, but then we have to give those people a chance to make up their mind, and we have to get them along with us because we're only as healthy as the same person is sitting next to us on our way to work in the next few months. If that person has not been vaccinated because we say, yeah, he's an anti-vaccine, let's not talk to him. He's the same person who's going to be sitting next to me when we've got a new variant and we don't have a booster, but not wanting to be an alarmist, but this thing is going to change. So how do we take everyone along with us?
Absolutely. I think the question you are raising, Keith, is very relevant because I know in the community, and I've spoken with quite a lot of people, there is probably a higher amount of vaccine hesitancy than it may be in other communities. But when you look at the whole way, the way the whole communication is playing out in the public sphere from the government and a variety of so-called experts and everything, everybody just pushing for vaccination. Obviously, there are good reasons for that. But there are people in the community who are anti-vaccine or simply think that the vaccine is not safe enough at this point for them to be able to take it. So that in itself creates significant amount of stress, which puts them in a situation of potentially suffering mental illness because of the fact that they are. It's a message that I don't want to hear, but wherever I go, I'm getting that. So is that what you're saying, Kev?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And I think what we need to also think about, vaccine hesitancy is not refusal. And we've got people I'm one of those who've said, give me the vaccine, I need it now. Then there are those who are sitting on the fence and they're not too sure.
Mhm.
And then there are those who say, don't come to me about this vaccine.
I'm never
So
going to take.
now we need to we need to work with all those parties.
Mm,
It's those who are sitting on the fence, we need to stop them from going over to the other side and
mm.
bring them to the vaccine if that's what we've decided that we're going to do. But at the same time, we can't force them to do that. But at the same time, we need to coexist with these ones who are saying, I don't want to hear anything about a vaccine. And so they've got that right to say that, because we cannot throw them away because they've said they don't want to be part of us. But we know that they're part of us, and some of them have helped us in so many ways. So if
Absolutely.
hesitancy is not refusal, and hesitancy is something that we can work with to bring them to this side, to say, what is it that you're not needing to understand? And you explain it in their language, in their terms, and you meet them where they want them to be met, not you asking them to go to meet them to come to you. So people need to go to the people where the people are. And it's happening, but there's room for improvement.
And that brings me to speak of the multifaceted aspect of this crisis, because obviously there's the disease itself, and then there's the fear that comes from that disease, that I may catch this disease and die. What's going to happen with my family and all that sort of thing. And then there's obviously the disruptions, the economic disruptions, because some people are losing their jobs or are not getting enough income. So you got to think of your mortgage, your rent, all that sort of thing. So that has a significant weight on you. And then there is maybe you have family members, people who are dying, and obviously you are grieving because of that. It could be here, it could be back in Africa, or anywhere where you have relatives, they are dying. And then you have this vaccine issue where, for some there's no issue with that, for others there is an issue. You see, it's a whole host of issues that are packed into one issue. Francis, now this leads us to going into how do we cope with this, with all these facets of this crisis, that it's like it's coming from all corners.
Well, that's the very, very big challenge that we are all facing, and it is massive in so many different ways. Even I was at a forum the other day, and a young bright girl says to us, I was doing well, and I thought this was my path, and I was one of the first people to lose our jobs. And I was like, wow. So, of course, it's happening across. But like we are saying, it's not only just happening within the community, but overall. Of course, now there's the job seeker or job keeper has been stopped. So that income that was even going to some people, no longer. People are losing their jobs. But bigger for us as Africans, supporting our families back home. And like Keith said, in actual fact, people are actually dying. Personally experiencing friends, two, a brother and a sister passing away within a week. Other people that I've heard of, 3 people dying in the family in a very short space of time. How do we support those people? How does this affect us here? How does that affect us with our work? How does it affect other people within our neighbors? So individually, we need to reach out. We need to. Mental health is not something that you actually see somebody walking down the road and shouting, "I've got mental health." Of course, it's the silent killer. How do we get the opportunity to express ourselves? How do we reach out for help? Some of us have been talking and protesting because, of course, the funding, I use the word, goes to the big boys. Who in our community calls Lifeline? Who in our community calls Beyond Blue? What needs to change is how do we support our people when they need help? And sometimes they need help now, not tomorrow, being able to get onto the phone, talk to somebody, and at times even talking to somebody in their own language or seeing somebody that they can trust. We are in the process of doing a survey about mental health. And one of the people said, I don't want to call Lifeline because they record everything that I'm going to say. And that's why people are hesitant to actually even call. One of the other big problems that we are facing is yesterday I called the helpline, the COVID helpline, and I said, there's too much information. You cannot, even myself as a professional that I can read and write, you go to a website and you have so much information, you don't know what is your left or
Relevant.
your right.
Mm.
Some of these needs to be taken into consideration and provide sustained information that could help people understand what the issues are. Of course, we've all know about the misinformation that we've all received regarding the actual vaccines. Now, that in itself actually affects your mental health. Are you going to have it or are you not? Are you going to have a Pfizer, Moderna? Are you going to have AstraZeneca? The message is not clear. The message to our communities needs to be succinct and able to actually go direct. I can raise my hand and say personally, I've had my 2 AstraZeneca vaccines. It wasn't affected me in any way. And I'm still practicing. I'm still getting out to see people. So we need to get the right information to our people.
Absolutely. Need to get the right information to our people. Let me remind those watching that you are watching African Knowledge, and I have with me today Dr. Francis and Keith, who are both mental health professionals, and we're talking about the mental health and emotional well-being of Africans in this COVID crisis. We would encourage you to make a comment and ask questions if you want. Just put them down. I mean, write them down and post them on your Facebook or YouTube YouTube video or Facebook page, and we will read them out to the guest today. Now, we've sort of talked about the all the different aspects of the crisis. Let's now go into some of the tools that we can use to try to help people to cope with this. Keith, what would you suggest? If you have 2-3 options, I mean, 2-3 things you would tell people in relation to how to deal with this crisis, what would they be?
Yeah, so for as I said initially, there is no proven method, but what has happened in the mental health space is that we've adopted different intervention strategies that we have worked when we're dealing with crisis and mental health well-being, and these strategies have been adopted and modified to address mental health within the COVID situation. So there is one that I would say, I don't want to go into too much detail on the type of therapy, but it's called acceptance and commitment therapy. What acceptance and commitment therapy looks at is that we can only control, we are focused on the things that are in front of us, and we accept them for what they are. So we accept that there's coronavirus and people are dying, but we also apply mindfully and acceptance skills to say, what is it within the coronavirus that I can control? So we focus on the things that I can control. What is within my control in this situation? Of course, I can't control the virus itself, but I can control what I read about it. Like Francis said, I can control the news. I'll listen to specific news because I'm getting bombarded with so much information and misinformation. So I need to filter through and say, I am going to listen, I'm going to read the ABC website because whatever else I'm receiving on the WhatsApp group is confusing me. The other part is also we acknowledge our feelings. So a lot of people are very angry. They're angry because of what has happened to their life. What has happened to your life? If you lost your job, your parents have passed away in Africa, or your relatives have passed away in Africa, and you've not been able to go back and go back and grieve properly. So we also need to look at what is it that we can do to engage ourselves in a sense of to refocus, to bring back our attention to the things that we can do. So we need that, and we need to come back into our body in a way that we've accepted that there's COVID. We've accepted that we can't control things. We've accepted that our feelings are anger and also disappointed. And we need to then move to the next part, which is what can we identify as resources that will make us move to the next stage. So it's about framing the situation that is in front of you, and the framing of the situation in front of you is based on your circumstances. There's no wrong or right answer way about it. If you've lost your job because of COVID, you are going to feel very angry, and so you accept that I've lost my job because of COVID. I am feeling very angry because I've not been able to grieve my friends or family who've passed away the way that I would have liked to grieve. Then the other part is, what can I do about it? So I will control certain things. And then what are the tools that I have in my kit to enable me to then remain as stable as I can? I think that's how I would sum it up.
Thank you. Francis, what, apart from what you've mentioned previously, obviously, what else comes to your mind?
Yeah, so I also use the very same name, but I will call it a wellness toolbox. And each of us can develop our own wellness toolbox by putting in and calling on positive things that helps us to develop ourselves and to recognize what is happening around us. Let's I talk about getting up in the morning. Of course, it's cold morning, but it's also fresh morning. So what do you do when you get up in the morning? Developing strategies, thinking through. I'm not talking about just individuals. We have the children. How do we do schoolwork? How do we give our children a break from the bombardment of information? When do we check on the children? When do we do something together? I will use this one again because I love it, because even people don't know what a Ludo is, or actually sitting down and playing Monopoly or Scramble, engaging with the family and doing things. When did we, as a family, sat down and ate together? How do we change some of the habits that we have developed, and we are no longer calling them as normal? So this is a time where I call it, the Japanese or the Chinese call it, in the terms of crisis, there are opportunities. And this is the right time to take that opportunity, bonding with the family. How do we communicate with other people? Calling on our neighbors, our friends. And even like Keith said, there are no prescriptions out there that you can come and see a psychologist, a mental health nurse, or social worker, and they will write you a script and say, do it this way. It's about the learning process. It's about some of the things that we have learned during this period. A whole lot of us, the last time there was a pandemic is 100 years ago. None of us were around. So we cannot even call on those skills. But 18 months nearly 2 years later down the track, we have developed a lot of resistance. And we can use those ones to actually help us to be able to move forward in our abilities to cope. When do we have extra food in our fridge? When do we have other things that we can call upon? That what I call the toolbox, having those positive things, some of the things that we've already learned during these 18 months that we can call upon, and we can easily rely on them to help us feel better.
Yeah.
I was doing a group work with a group of young people today, and I was talking about sleep. Of course, we all have what I call the devil, our mobile phones. We are sitting and we are watching this thing 24/7. Lucky for them, they are in the hospital. So at 10 o'clock, they have to give away their phone, 10 to 8 o'clock in the morning. And therefore, they don't look at those screens any longer. And it's a new thing for them. How? My telephone is going to the bathroom right after this program. I no longer watches the screen after that. We have to give ourselves those type of break. And that's a therapy for me, because I no longer want to listen to somebody else calling me, or for that matter, screaming through tons of emails or WhatsApp messages, or the new one, Telegram.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Obviously, I think that's a very good idea. We have to develop our own well-being toolbox and use them in a way that works for us. Keith, I think us as Africans, traditionally, we've been and we remain very resilient people. We very, mentally quite strong to sustain a lot of things. What can we get from our African source that can help us into this situation? You think of anything?
That's a good point. In that, at some point, I lived in the African village and we had drought, and I would like to use the similarity between drought and COVID. Of course, they're quite different, but what the similarities are those two things that I mentioned at the start: unpredictability and lack of control. When we're faced with the drought, we didn't know when it was going to rain. So we had no control about what was going to happen next. And we had no control about what is it that we could do. We could only have so much water and we could only eat certain things. So there was no control of our life. But in this situation of COVID, as an African person, we need to go back to our values. What are our values? What are our core values? We come from a society that lives collectively. The collectiveness of our collectiveness is what needs to come out now. The collectiveness that came out when there were droughts was amazing, in that we came together as a village to look after those who had little. But in this situation, what we don't need to do is to give any. We can give if we want to, but the people who have got the basic things. What we need to do is that collectiveness, use our skills and knowledge. With what you're doing, Clive, is a very good example that we are getting out and saying, you are not going to get a tail from getting your vaccine. They were debunking all those messages that are circulating around. Your DNA is not going to change. But we need to go a step further to say, how do we explain a vaccine to someone who's got no idea, and because someone else has already done it for them, but they've misinformed them. So we need to get out there and explain it in a simple and straightforward way. If I can give you an example, saying someone who's went out and said, how do you explain a vaccine to someone who's got no idea what vaccines are? The person said, his vaccine is going to give me it's going to change my DNA. And the player says, no, it's not going to change your DNA. But one way that someone has said is that a vaccine is like taking an army and sitting it there and showing your soldiers and say, next time when you see those guys wearing that uniform, you need to attack them. And that's exactly a very simple thing that can be used to describe what a vaccine is in the body. We've got our protective antibodies or whatever we have in our body that protects us from being sick. But we need to break that down and say, how then does the vaccine protect me from getting COVID? So explaining that in a simple way is something that we can do as a society. So going through those crisis processes, but at the same time saying what are our values as a collective society and debunking some of those things and sitting down with the government saying, we've got suggestions, we've got the solutions, but don't come to us only when there's a crisis to say, look at what the African community has done. So I think we need to be a step ahead than what we've been doing, being reactive. We need to be proactive. So I think as a society, we've got a lot more that we can offer.
Absolutely. And I suppose psychologically, we also do have, I suppose there's a concept called reframing, where obviously, you may be in a tough situation, but you find a way of reframing that situation to see the best out of that. Because even in the West particular situation, there may always be something there that could be positive. Every crisis is also an opportunity, the Chinese say, and Dr. Francis mentioned that before. What are some of the ways you can suggest that people reframe this whole crisis? I know already one is going around, all these lockdowns. Yes, you can look at them as a restriction of liberty, but it could also be free vacation, forced weekend, so you can relax. That's one way of reframing the sentiment of being locked down and not having to move around. You can find things that you haven't done for quite some time and do it because they're forcing you to stay at home. So what are some of the other things that you guys may think of that can help people to reframe this whole crisis situation?
I think spending quality time with family. You suddenly have, if you've got a family, that is, this is another assumption that we've got a family. If you've got a family that you're living with, I think one of the things is getting into a routine as a family to say, what do we do? Having a meal together, having that time to talk about what are you feeling today? What was the best thing that happened to you? What did you enjoy the most today? So talking to the kids and saying, what was the best part about your feeling? What was the best part about daycare today? What was the best time about, as little as it might be, finding that small positive thing can actually make the day feel better. So it's about using what you have in front of you, and what you have in front of you is a lot of hours with your family together. And so use it wisely and say, we dedicated an hour of just us talking, putting away the phone and things like that. So I think that's, small as it might be, it's got potential to make a huge difference.
Dr. Francis, anything else you may think of in that reframing sort of perspective?
Well, it's very similar. Again, it's what I've been talking about is the dialogue. It's about communication. We've stopped talking to each other. We now rely on, and funny enough, it happened in my household the other day. We were looking for one of my daughters, and we had to ring her on her mobile in order to find her. We are not communicating any longer, but we can use those little things, that conversation. Can we turn off our mobile phone and talk about something? Can we prepare a meal together? Cooking is so powerful in so many ways. I usually say, look, for me, any ingredients in the pantry, I can turn it into a food. So those are great opportunities that we can't allow this period to disappear without even getting the children and forget about what Keith has said, that, those who don't have a family. For me, what I've even been teaching people who are single with by themselves, also the opportunity to experiment on different type of food. And for my clients, they actually text me the new things that they've been able to prepare to share with other people. The joy actually of having a result of doing something. So it's about practicing different things. I've
Yeah.
encouraged people to bring back their hobbies that they have forgotten about. One of my clients have been dying to learn how to play the guitar. She's picked up the guitar. Somebody has picked up the ukulele. I wouldn't really strongly encourage this one, but this one, they went and bought a dog. That's what they wanted. But it's about some of these conversation, bringing them, their old hobbies, painting,
Yeah.
drawing, something that people actually have stopped doing because we had no time to
Yeah.
do those things. Is
All
bringing
right.
those things back.
Yeah,
Just,
keep
just one, just to add one more thing, Clyde. I think one of the important things that we've overlooked is that if you had tried to arrange this evening conversation with me, I would have told you a year ago, no, thank you, I can't do it. I've got to be at home with the kids. But now with technology, we are able to use Zoom and any other things to interact. As an African community with the African Zimbabwean men, I should be specific, we've met about 4 times on a Saturday evening just to talk about different things that we can do.
Mm.
2 years ago, we wouldn't have done that because it would have taken so much time to arrange. So the embracing the new technology to be able to do things that we probably wouldn't have been able to do. But
Mm.
now with Zoom being more available and other forums like the forum that you've used is a good example of how we've adopted and we've embraced the new life, the new COVID normal.
Yeah, absolutely. I know technology can be a problem, but it can also be a solution because
Yeah.
rather than just using the mobile and flicking over the, Facebook wall all day, but you can use another aspect of technology where you connect people. They may be far away, even overseas, but you can have a conversation. You can play some games. You can dance, and I think that's one thing that we Africans are always comfortable with. Find some good music and maybe start a dancing contest in your own house and see who's going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings out the creativity as well.
Absolutely. Now we're approaching the end of this show. We got about 5-6 more minutes. I'm just going to ask you to sort of summarize what we've spoken tonight. I know obviously there's issue of the fact that the crisis is multifaceted and there are so many issues, and people have to increase their capacity to deal with the situation. Also, the government needs to communicate better with our communities. The way the communication goes sometimes is not always the best and doesn't always fit everybody, and there must be more effort to facilitate a better conversation. And it's not just about the government, it's also leaders in our own communities who also have some sort of influence, and people like yourselves who have skills in this space to see a way of bringing it all together to help people in this crisis. So I'm going to leave you, I'll give you 2-3 minutes each to sort of say a last word with a few things you want to leave people with, some sort of take-home message.
Yeah. I always give my elders go first. So, Dr. Francis, you go first.
Well, look, thank you, Clyde, for this opportunity. And for me, it's about us individuals taking responsibility and taking action and taking care of our own. And as this is a forum, mental health and well-being is about how do we maintain that and how do we connect. Of course, there's so much information, sometimes too much information, but it's us using our own abilities, using our learning processes to gain better self-control, self-wellness, and our family wellness. And I'll go back to one of the things that Keith had said. It's us as a collective society. We must not forget our village. We must think about our village first rather than being so isolated. Knock on your door, your next door neighbor, say hi, and the blessings that you will receive, you will never forget. I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. Keith?
Yeah, thank you, Francis. I think I'll absolutely agree with those points that you've highlighted. And I can add that framing your situation is the first part. We're all facing very difficult circumstances that we've not faced before. So framing your situation to say, I am angry with this situation because I was told that if we flatten the curve, we will be out of this. And we did flatten the curve 6 times, and 5 times, I should say, and now we're back in this. It feels like we're running a race that is got no finishing line in sight. Then the second part is that what is it that I can do? What measures can I take? What is it that I can control? I'll focus on what I can control. The things that I can control, I'll control those. And then acknowledge my thoughts and feelings and say, I am angry and I've got a very good reason to be angry. The third part is the challenge of what can I do to help myself and others. So the vaccine hesitancy part of it, if you're eligible, go out and get your vaccine. If you're not too sure, talk to someone that you think might be able to give you the right information, probably your GP, if you've got one that is good one. If you've got someone within the community that you can trust to say, what is it out there that I can do to get the right information? Thirdly, I think going back to our core values identify who we are as a society. We are a society that is respectful, that follows the rules, a society that thinks about others. So going back to those core values, those deep things that were embedded within us in the time of crisis, not just to help ourselves, but to help those out there as a society, I think we can do more than that. So there is more that we can do. As small as it might seem, it will make a big difference.
Well, as small as it may seem, it may make a difference indeed. Thank you very much, Keith, for coming tonight. Thank you very much, Dr. Francis Akwa, for your time to Africa Media Australia. And it's all about sharing what we know and empowering each other through knowledge and through exchange of information that may help each other. So that is it for tonight, fellows. Those who have been watching, thank you again for taking the time to watch our show, and we encourage you to share, to continue to make comments when the show is on, and obviously also we encourage you to subscribe to our channel so that you get all the notification about the publications we're making, and then don't forget to click on that clock for notification. I can see Emmanuel Sidibe, who came with a question. Unfortunately, it's very late, but I'll still put that question on the screen. It says, what can we do to encourage African community to be vaccinated, as many are not wanting to do so? That is a fair question, and I know a number of people in the community who are in that position. We had a show last week sometime where we had 2 medical doctors from African background who talked about this issue. They were all encouraging vaccination. I'm also trying to organize people on the other side who may have hesitancy or who may be even anti-vaccination. Everybody has their right to their opinion, even though there's a public push from the government that people should vaccinate, and there may be some good reasons for that. But ultimately, it comes down to a decision that people have to make individually. We will continue to facilitate conversations around this topic so that people are well informed, and those who, for example, have been vaccinated can come and like Francis and Keith today, they said they have been vaccinated, and that shows that maybe it's not a big deal. You can go and get vaccinated, but if you still don't want to get vaccinated, nobody should force you to get vaccinated. Maybe the government one day will force people to be vaccinated. We don't know. It looks like slowly we're getting to a situation where they may not necessarily force you, but they will do everything to make sure that you get vaccinated. Otherwise, your life will be miserable. If we get to that, we will see how we go and what needs to be done at that point. At this point, all that is important is to make sure you are safe. If you obviously have been vaccinated, that's a good thing for yourself. If you have not yet been vaccinated, find the information you need to know before you can make that extra step to be vaccinated. Overall, take precautions to make sure you don't expose yourself or your family to this virus because it is a killer. Here at Africa Media Australia, we will simply give people opportunity to share what they know and help the community to be informed and be able to make the right decisions. That is all for tonight. Thank you again for everyone. Until next time, stay blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.